Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching another Photoshop tutorial. This week I'm going to show you how you can recreate the look and the feel of a traditional film image, but all done digitally. Now, there's quite a bit to get through with this tutorial, so let's get cracking. This is hopefully what we're going to end up with, or at least something vaguely similar to it, but we actually start with a blank image, nothing on it at all. Come up to File and choose New, and then put some specific dimensions in here. A width of 800 pixels, and a height of 600 pixels. Now on our blank image, which is currently white, we're going to change the colour, and we're going to change it to black simply by pressing Ctrl and I. Great. We're also going to get a copy of that black layer by pressing Ctrl and J. And you know what? I'm now going to change it back to white again. Typical really, isn't it? So Ctrl and I once more. Right, what we're doing here is making our film, our strip of film, but we're making it one frame at a time. So this is going to be the inside of our image, but it's the same size as the outside at the moment. But if we use a bit of free transform, edit and free transform, or Control T if that's easier, we can change the shape of this. Here's a little trick. Hold the Alt key and drag the top middle corner handle down. It's not really a corner handle, the top middle handle would make more sense. When you drag that down holding Alt, the bottom one comes up to meet it, which is kind of clever. We're trying to make our height about 75% of its original size. I'm not being desperately accurate, I'm just having a rough and ready look at the options bar. Let's do the same on the left hand side as well. We'll bring the middle handle in, and this time we're going to make it about 90-ish%. 92, that's definitely close enough. Okay, so there we are. We've now made something that looks a little bit, if you use your imagination a wee bit, like a bit of a film strip. But trust me, it gets better as we go. We've got two layers. We only need one. So I'm going to use quite a few keyboard shortcuts today just to try and speed things on. One we're going to use now is Control and E. That's Command E on a Mac to collapse those two layers down. Right, let's copy this. Select and select all. Edit and copy. And we can get rid of that, we don't need it anymore. And let's jump over to another picture. Now what I've got here is just a blank A4 sized canvas. And onto that I've just put a couple of gradients here. So we're going to paste in our bit of film that we just made. So let's go to Edit and Paste, like so. There it is. I actually need two of these, so let's go back to Edit and Paste again. And then I can shuffle this off to the side, something like that. Just make sure they nicely line up by using the keyboard just to line it up neatly. Good stuff. Now we'll use that Control E trick again to merge those two layers down. And then the Control J to make a copy of that layer. And now we can make a copy of our little 2 film strip. So 2 becomes 4. Like that. And again we'll merge those two down with Control E. So there we are. We now have a strip with 4 cells for 4 images. But if you ever remember working with film, and I did it for many years, you'll know that film had little holes, little rebate holes running along the top and bottom. So we've got to add those in as well. And we're going to do that with the eraser tool. So let's grab the eraser tool and we're going to come up to our brushes and we're going to find these square brushes. Now they're not loaded into Photoshop as standard, so you'll need to come up to the little button in the top right corner, click it and then find these square brushes down at the bottom. Click Append to the option that pops up. Append means it will add to your existing brush set and not remove them. And then find the biggest square brush you can, which is the number 24 one there. Right. Okay, so number 24 is the biggest it comes with, but it's not big enough. So I'm just going to increase my brush size using my right square bracket on the keyboard to 35. But before I use this brush, I need to do one more thing to it just to get it ready. That's come up to the brush panel up here. Click that and make sure I'm working on the brush tip shape. Now when you find the brush tip shape, you'll find there's a spacing option, and increasing the spacing will, well, increase the spacing between your brushes, like that. And we're looking for a spacing of about 300-ish%. It doesn't have to be accurate, that'll do, close enough. So now when we use our eraser tool, I can click once there, then bring it all the way to the other end, hold Shift, click again, and it'll make a nice straight erase, and it has a nice little spacing like so. So we'll do that again along the bottom, click once, hold Shift, and click again like that. So there we are. We've now got our little sprocket holes in, but we also need to remove these white bits so we can see a picture behind those. So we'll do that by using the Magic Wand tool. Grab the Magic Wand tool, click inside these white areas. I'm holding Shift so I can add more and more to the selection, and then just hit Delete on the keyboard like so. And we'll get rid of the selection like that. Now, that's our film strip ready. Okay, we've made a film strip from scratch. You can see it's kind of transparent. You can see through the holes. It's all looking pretty good, but we've got to put some pictures inside it. Now, you can put any pictures in you like, but I've got a couple of pictures I want to use. So let's bring the first one onto the screen, and I'm going to select all, then edit and copy, and close it down, go back to edit and paste it in. Now it's going to be a little bit on the big side. Yours might be very big, mine are just a wee bit too big, but either way they need to be shrunk. So we'll go back to edit and use free transform. Now I'm just going to bring this across like that, and then shrink it down by grabbing a corner handles. Now the chances of this fitting exactly under your film rebate are practically zero, so I'm actually going to stretch mine out. Now I know what you're thinking, stretched out, it's not going to look so good when you stretch it out like that, but in fact it'll be absolutely fine. We're going to do so much stretching with this picture in a minute or two that a little bit really won't matter too much. Okay, let's click the tick when we're done. Now, one thing you will notice is that my picture on the layers palette is actually above my film rebate, and it needs to be reversed. To get this to look really good, we've got to drag that underneath and drop it in behind the film rebate like that. Okay, that should now look pretty good. Let's zoom in. Yeah, that looks like it's all fitting in pretty nicely. Right, I'm going to add in a few more pictures, but because I don't want to take too long, I'm going to pick the pace up a little bit now. Let's come over and grab my next picture. There we go. With 4. Right, okay, so there's my picture all in place, and it's all looking pretty good. It's looking like a strip of film. On the layers though, we've now got quite a bunch of layers. We've got a film strip at the top and 4 pictures underneath, and a background layer as well. Now I want to merge all of those layers except the background layer. So I'm going to do that by clicking on the top one, that's the film rebate, then holding Shift and clicking on the bottom one so they all become selected, and then we'll use that Control E trick we used before to merge those together. Good, okay, now, pretty good there, it's all one piece, but I'm going to start twisting and bending this now. This is the fun bit for me. So we're going to come up to Edit, use Transform, and then Warp. Now Warp's great. If you've never played with Warp, just fire it up and have fun with it, because it really is rather wonderful. But Warp comes with some custom shapes. You'll find them on the options bar here. And if I click the little down arrow, I can use, for example, Flag, which is the one I want to use, to give this a kind of a twist shape, like that. To really add a bit of 3D depth to this though, I'm going to go back to Edit, Transform, and try Perspective as well. So now I can start to change the perspective. I can shrink this down. I can grow this up quite a lot, something like that. Good stuff. So now you can start to see this has a real feeling of perspective, but it has stretched out that front bit really quite severely. So we're going to go back to Edit and use Free Transform this time and just bring that in a little bit so it's not quite as wild and wacky as it was before, and also stretch it vertically as well, just to try and keep something of the proportions. See, I told you we were going to do a lot of transformations here. Something like that. Okay, that's fine. Maybe a little rotation as well. Good stuff. Okay, we'll click the tick. So it's all coming together quite nicely, but the last thing I want to do is to really enhance the feeling of 3 dimensions by putting shadows in. Can't emphasize enough how important shadows are if you're trying to make your pictures have a feeling of the 3rd dimension. We're going to put it on its own layer, this shadow, so let's make a new empty layer. There it is. And we'll get ourselves a paintbrush. And what size paintbrush have we got? Well, let's go with a 300 pixel brush like that. And we'll just draw out a 300 pixel straight line right horizontally across the picture. I know it's not in the right place, but that won't matter. We'll change it in a minute. To give this a feeling of 3 dimension, one end of our brush needs to be thicker than the other. And you can't do that when you're drawing, but you can do that by going to Transform and Perspective again, and then changing the perspective so one end becomes a really fine point like that. And the other end we can stretch out to make it feel kind of big and thick and much softer. Okie dokie, last thing to do then is just put it in place. So we'll use a bit of Free Transform again. rotate this around. That little point needs to be right on the edge of our film strip up there somewhere, and this needs to go round behind. And it just takes a couple of goes to get this absolutely spot on, but something like that looks pretty good. Actually, it's not bad at all. If you've got it slightly adrift, use the move tool and the keyboard cursor keys just to fine tune it. Of course, if you're having a shadow, the shadow must go behind your subject, can't go in front, so we better drop that in on the layer behind our film strip like that. Okay, so there we are. There's how you can create your own three-dimensional film strips using photographs that you've taken and anything that Photoshop gives you.